Hi, welcome or welcome back. My name is Eleanor, and today I'm going to try to talk about this book. It's very hard to talk about it, it's very hard to review it. The book is All Fours by Miranda July. A good book, an important book, a new book. This is basically a book about a woman, unnamed. Our protagonist lives in California. She's American. She's a fun and unusual person. She's an artist. She's a deep thinker. She's highly creative and quite funny as well. She is a successful artist. Now, she's not a huge celebrity, but she's known well enough that strangers recognize her. And she does have ambition to go further. And that's important. She's married. She's in a heterosexual monogamous marriage with the nicest guy you've ever met. Harris is also, he's in the art world. I believe he's a music producer, and he's successful, and he supports his wife in all her endeavors. He knows her very well. He is able to compromise. They have a child who I believe is possibly 6 or 7. They are a loving family. The woman is a very good mother. Not in the sense of being a saint, but if you read the first 80 to 100 pages of this book, you really, because it's told in the first person, you can really embrace the protagonist. She cares deeply. She's involved in everything from the trivial to the vital. She is open and loving. She listens. It's also interesting that she has a great deal of deeper philosophical emotions that are connected also to something biological that happened when the child was born. There was a very frightening medical emergency at the birth, and she to this day has not gotten over it. And you can see how important it is for her to have a child and have a family. She has a best friend called Geordie, who's an extraordinary friend, and she has art friends, she has other friends. There really isn't anything unusual other than the fact that this first 100 pages is written so absolutely brilliantly. And then something happens at around the 100-page mark, and other things come into play, and you realize that she also has a very strong sexual push towards something, and she doesn't know what, and she doesn't quite understand it, and it's connected to her art, and it's connected to being a woman. And she goes on a trip and explores that aspect of herself. And because she's a fully rounded sexual being, she makes choices that are unexpected, and would probably be choices that would be more acceptable in literature. We'd be more used to reading about them if they were done by a male protagonist. And so there is a seduction that's involved. There is an age discrepancy. There is an obsession that takes over her life. And this obsession and attempted seduction and obsession leads to two other sexual encounters that really, really, they impact her in a very profound way. And all this time, we as the readers are involved in every aspect of these sexual moments. And they are not the typical sexual acts that are generally in literature written about in connection with a woman who is, if you remember, she's still also the woman at the beginning. She's still that woman doing those things. And then comes into play the overriding theme which the writer Miranda July brings into her protagonist's life, which is the protagonist's realization, if you like, or discovery of the science, the biology behind possibly what she's feeling and what she's thinking. And that is the fact of perimenopause, the time in your life when you are biologically nearing menopause around the age 45, 50, and your hormones are going up and down, and you're experiencing a kind of roller coaster ride with your emotions. Every woman is different in this aspect, so it's hard to generalize. But it's a time when women generally struggle a lot, both with their emotions and their sexuality. And for this particular protagonist, her shock at realizing that her libido, she only has a few years left, possibly, of this libido, of this body that she's used to, it leads her to a panic that heightens the drama of everything that she's been doing. So the drama of her marriage, of her relationship with her child, her relationship with herself, relationship with art, sexual relationships, friendships, everything is heightened to such a state that it's often very, very confronting to read because of that immediacy. And I think it's very easy when discussing this book to get carried away with talking about the specific decisions and the specific acts, be they sexual or not, that the protagonist decides on, and to either judge her or applaud her. But that really, I feel that doing that would really take away from the power of the novel. In a way, there are so many different ways to read this novel. I feel that it's probably going to be a text that will be studied for many years to come. There is a fairy tale aspect to the way it's written. It's almost like a twisted fairy tale where you have a protagonist who really gives herself 3 different sexual challenges. Another way of seeing it is a kind of narrative that takes a male perspective and inserts the female personality, the female perimenopausal personality into it. And I couldn't help thinking about films like Mrs. Robinson, and also a film I hadn't seen in so long, back from my younger years, which I had to actually look up. I remembered it was with Demi Moore and Robert Redford. Well, it's called Indecent Proposal. And that brought to mind the way that money and class is explored as well. So I highly recommend it, and I'm hoping that finally I got to the point where I can be proud of a review of this book, because so far I think I must have filmed at least 6 or 7 different fully formed videos reviewing this book, and I have ended up just erasing each and every one because they played into the hype rather than the truth of the story. And so I hope that if you haven't read this book, it might entice you to read it, because it's the kind of art that around the 2/3 way mark pushes you away, well, might push you away. And I think that's what the most interesting art does. But there is, of course, the possibility that it might put you off altogether. There is a wonderful video by a book reviewer who's a professor called The Foxed Page. I'll leave a link to that. I highly recommend. She's got an hour and a half delving into the symbolism and the levels of meaning within this book. But I do think it's better to read the book first, and I hope you enjoy it. Okay, all the best, and don't forget, the only real property is the property of the mind. Bye.